Hello, so what we're going to do now is we're going to start looking at the grammar of Scots. So we've looked at the sounds so far, what Scots is, some of the words and things like that. But the grammar is the engine that makes up Scots. And you'll find folk using Scots words using the grammar of English, and this influences written Scots all the way back the past couple of hundred years. And that's, I guess, we've got a kind of idea of prescriptive grammar. So that's telling folk this is the way that you should write, and that's has been applying the rules of grammar for English. Now we've had a big shift in this, and what I'm looking at here is descriptive grammar, as I said before. So what we're looking at is giving you the tools, tooling you up, so as that you can understand what's going on with your language. How the words are all put together, what order they go in, but the individual words. So we're going to go through all the pairs of speech with this. So mostly we'll stick to Scots grammar. Sometimes I'll compare it to standard English grammar. Behaves quite different between the two. So at times. So if I look at these are the pairs of speech that we're going to go through. So we'll start halfway in this one. We're going to look at interjections and nouns, right? So an interjection is something, an utterance, a wee phrase or a word that expresses a thought or a feeling. And these will not necessarily be part of a fully formed sentence, something that's got a verb and a noun in it, and all the other words. And then after that, we're going to look at nouns today. Nouns are names for things, individual things, or for groups of things, whether they're in the real world, concrete nouns, something you can point at. There's Jamie, there's a woman, or an abstract noun, so like that's an idea. Heaviness, something like that, something that names a concept rather than something you can actually point at in the world. Now then we'll have a look, after that, we'll have a look at pronouns, determiners, adjectives. These are words that kind of are associated with nouns and give you more information about the noun. So, or a pronoun can be used in place of a noun. So rather than saying, so that's an example of pronouns. Determiners attach to nouns, so you would say the coo, or the water, or you can say what, the socks that's lying over there, that kind of thing. So they add to that. And an adjective will describe a noun, so you can say like big Jamie, wee Fred, that kind of thing. So you put a word before it that gives you more information about it. So like the red shoes, or the red shoon, if you're going to use the Scots plural, the red shoon, something like that. So that's what adjectives do. Prepositions, they relate time, space, and idea. So put the football in the bag. So in is a preposition, so it tells you where it's going. I'm going out the door. So that would be out would be the preposition in that. So we'll have a look at that. And then we've got verbs. They're the action words. So I'll run, I'll dreep, I'll swallow. These kind of words that tell you about the actions that's going on. But we've got a couple of special ones. We've got the auxiliary verbs, to be, to have, and to do, and Scots. And they help us express different tenses of verbs. So verbs come in different tenses, so you can say, I dreep off the wall, or I dreeped off the wall. And then you'll get it. Help to be other verbs. So I'm running down the street. I'm running down the street. I've ate my dinner. So in that you've got I am running. Then you get I have ate my dinner. A day like porridge, right? So that's day is coming in there and it's helping it out. And these auxiliary and modal verbs, they take the negative form as well. So I dinna, I willna, I havena, I couldn't, that kind of thing. So we'll have a wee look at that, how they behave different for standard English. And then we've got adverbs, and they kind of work a wee bit like adjectives, where they give you additional information about the verb, but they also give you information about the sentence and other things like that. And then finally we'll look at conjunctions, and they're words like and but and yet that put together words and phrases to make full sentences. So we'll finish off with that. So that's how we'll go through all these pairs of speech, and that'll give you, hopefully, it'll tell you up so you can get the ideas that allow you to understand your own language, Scots, and we'll be looking at it for Scots. Now, a lot of this we kind of understand just intuitively as speakers in the language, but we didn't often learn about it formally, so you'll understand what's going on as we go through. So we'll start off with the interjections, and as I said, interjections are like words or expressions that will not necessarily form full sentences, but they express ideas. The most common ones we use, let's see, so I'll go through just some noises, right? We'll start with a second group here. So we've got noises like ach, ugh, how, that kind of thing, that aren't like full proper words, but they're used to express things. So if you say, I'll do it anyway, or I'm not doing that. So these ach and ugh, they've got different meanings with these kind of wee sounds, and most of them are spelled out. You'll find there's spellings that have been used for centuries that folk actually use these words. And then you get like single words that are just out there, you know, like havers, mince, blethers, if somebody's talking about a wee of blethers, for all them, and things like wheesht, if you tell somebody wheesht, or you've got kind of swearing and things like that, or words that are kind of like swearing, but you're not actually swearing. These are minced oaths, you call them, so that's like jings, grivens, help my bob. These kind of wee expressions, if you go, oh, sugar, oh, sugar alley, that kind of thing. And that's a minced oath. So they're part of that, I know. So you're not quite swearing. Swearing counts, I know, as an interjection often. Then phrases like no danger, you're going up the road. Oh, no danger, you done that kind of thing. I can't believe that you did that. No danger. Whistle for it, that kind of thing, where it's you would say whistle for it if somebody wanted something and not getting. So you say, aye, whistle for it. And then there's other ones like approval, bra, rare, smashing, that kind of thing. So I'll go back. The most common ones are aye and no, or nah in the northeast. It kind of goes towards that. Now, aye and no, it's not a full sentence, so you're just expressing, you're just interjecting your approval or assent or disapproval or no assent. Aye, I'll do that. Aye, okay. No, nah. No worries. I should say the spelling, right? That's AY spelling. If you're interested in spelling it, you'll often find the E at the end, but that tends to get used for I. Always AYE would be I for yeah. You always do that. AY is a spelling, but in standard English, you only really encounter this for like a vote, and it's used in the plural form. So you'll get the I's have it and the no's have it. And that's spelled AYES, and nose is spelled NOES. And what's happened for the singular is that ES, it's just the S that's been removed. So folks spell it AYE. But if you're wanting to do the more traditional spelling, it's AY. So that's how it's that. And then I and no, they've got hundreds of variations. So I can be yep, yours, no bother, something like that. No has like no chance, that kind of thing. So there's variations in these, and these go on. So there's hundreds of interjections. There's loads and loads of them, but they're just a wee kind of idea of what's going on. If you're writing and scripting stuff, using the right interjections can make a big difference for like scripts and stories and things like that. So even though they sound like wee kind of things, they do matter. One, I guess I should say, is the one that's used for a kind of verbal pause and things like that in English, ER. That's because in English there isn't an R in the spoken speech in Englishes, most Englishes. So that's a sound. And in Scots, you usually write that's EH. That's what folks say for delaying. So that's what interjections. We'll go on now to look at the nouns, or the nouns, if you want to say them. So this is a word that names a particular thing, a class of things. So we'll look at the proper nouns. These are words that name particular things. So usually there's just one thing, or with a name. We understand, we can who we're talking about. If we say Jamie, if we say Susie, we ken the one that we're talking about. And if we don't, we add extra phrases to that. Oh, you ken Susie with the blonde heater, the fair heater lassie, that kind of thing. So that's we elaborate on that, but that's names are proper nouns. So we've got ones like often you'll find place names. We'll start here. I've got an half different pronunciation in the spoken Scots. You'll find a map at scotslanguage.com. We've got a digital map up there that you can have a gander at. So just go through a few here. So you've got Aberdeen. We'll start with that. Aberdeen. So the Aber and Aber parts of that word means the mouth of a river, and that's for a language that's a Celtic language that predates Gaelic. So before Gaelic was spoken in Scotland, you had Pictish and Cumbric was spoke, and they're kind of related to modern Welsh. They all had that kind of old form. So that was spoke of Scotland, and that's where that word comes from. Aber. Now, Aber in Scots. So Aber, when the maps were kind of getting regularised, Aber is the Welsh, the English form. So like Aberystwyth, places like that, Aberfenny, these places. So Aber in Scots, Aberdeen got corrected into Aberdeen. So that's what's going on there. Another place name that comes from the Cumbric would be Glasgow. And this is a kind of modern pronunciation in local Scots of that. There's a few different ideas of what it meant. It's maybe the Cumbric, the Old Brythonic for green, fair, good looking place, that kind of thing. I've also heard that folk talking about it referring to a graveyard. I'm not quite sure if that's exactly right, but there was a graveyard, then there was a kirk, then there was a town in a city after that in the story of Glasgow. We see the OW ending here in English, that in the west and south tends towards being the A form. In the east and further north, it can go to the A form, and you'll hear folk talk about Glasgow, but that's usually for folk that don't speak a Glasgow dialect. So it's a dialect of Scots. But you see that in Lithgow. So Lithgow, we've got that gay ending. And then Galway, we've got that kind of A ending there for Galloway. And then in the south and east, there's a lot of places that have got right old names, because that's where Scots first established itself in what we now call Scotland. So you get places like Jether for Jedburgh, Kirkcudbright, which is written as Kirkcudbright, right? So you get a lot of kind of big differences in these place names, and you can search them out. There's most places have got a kind of Scots name and then a anglicised version of that name that you'll usually see written down. Then we've got personal names. So often these are pronounced a bit different for they're spelled. So like Margaret is often said Margaret. Andrew is often Andra or Andro, Andre, and places with that A ending there. David would be Dovet. And then this pair have got that 27th letter of the Scots alphabet, the Yoch. And when printing came into Scotland, that was replaced with a Z. So some names retain that Yoch sound, which is like a Y. So Diel, we've got that there. Then you've got like the old shops, John Menzies, John Mingus. How is it said? Folk used to call it Mingus, and then when it was seen wrote down, folk tended to call it Menzies. Another one here's Mackenzie. That's McKinney. Is how it's Mackenzie is how it's kind of said where I come from. And you'll find this with loads of names. You'll get names like Watson, gets anglicised into Watson, Wilson into Wilson. There's hundreds of Scots names. Brown becomes Brown. That's a good example there. You'll get that change in a lot of names. Sometimes it reflects the Gaelic spelling. So McGregor is one that folk called McGregor that I grew up with. They were the McGregors. So you'll often get a change in the sound of names, personal names. And then we see, and we'll look at this when we go to determiners, you've got the in front of hundreds of place names. So we see here Jethert becomes Jedburgh, Fraserburgh becomes the Broch. Now the Broch is the Scots for borough or borough in English. That becomes Borg and Berg, or like Strasbourg, Borg, and as you go further north. So there's loads of places like that. And boroughs, Scots is intimately connected with the boroughs. Now that was a system that the Crown brought in, where they set up legal trading places, then places maybe the sheriff courts and things like that. And Scots was spoke there. That's where Scots came in the 12th century to Scotland, because that was the kind of language of the Brochs. Some places it maintains Broch, the older spelling. Some places it's lost at the end. So you've got Edinburgh, the capital city. Edinburgh becomes Edinburgh, and older forms. And between the B and the R, that's where you get that wee sleek vowel. So it's Broch becomes Broch, Baroch, Broch, Borough. So Edinburgh is kind of maintained that BR with a wee sleek vowel in it, excuse me. And then you get roads and places like the Gorbals, the Renton, and then place names like the Briggate in Glasgow, Bridgegate. I'd never even thought it would be called Bridgegate. I've seen they put up new signs at the Briggate. I was like, oh, is that the right name for it? But it's the anglicised name for it. So a lot of place names will take that for it. Some place names will be half anglicised. So you've got Brayhead becomes Brayhead. So Bray being a hill. I guess if you're wanting to fully anglicise that, it would be something like Browhead or Hillhead. You would change it to, rather than Brayhead. So you maintain the Scots word in half it, and then Brayhead. You'll find this in places like Sucky Hall Street in Glasgow. That's a haugh. It's H-A-U-G-H, and a soch is a willow tree. So it's a kind of flat bit of land with willow trees. That's what that means. Hall, H-A-L-L, has got nothing to do with it. That's just put the rang equivalent word on it there. And then we've got short nouns. Short nouns tend to take an S in Scots speakers, and usually a bit before that. So I'm going to the Tesco's, I'm going to the Asda's, I'm going to the Lidl's, I'm going to the, I had a piece at Subways, right? That kind of thing. Often shop places have an S, like Sainsbury's, Morrison's, McDonald's, something like that. But usually that S gets put on the front and that gets put there, I know, in Scots speech. And then this one, Nae Danger, that's an energy drink called Nae Danger, kind of Red Bull or something like that. And there's hundreds, if you look about, loads and loads of businesses use Scots in their names, particularly hairdressers and things like that. So you'll see proper names that contain Scots. Oyer Scotland, we're flicking up. So that's proper nouns. Wee quick example is numbers and days of the week and months, take proper nouns. So to quickly go through these, you've got Monday, Tuesday, which most folk will say Tuesday, Wednesday or Wednesday, but it still maintains the 3 syllables of Scots. It's no Wednesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. So that's pretty much the Scotians for the days of the week. The months would be January, February. Now these are quite old, and you find that as a feature in kind of older Scots. R going on here, Y. Scots, it's just a bit R. Like Libra for a library. Dictionary for a dictionary. That kind of thing. Now, I've never really heard folks saying these forms, or kind of older ones. You do hear March. April, I've never really heard that. April, most folk go away. May, for the month of May, or May. June, that's got this UI, so that becomes June. Most folks say it that way in the south and west, and in the northeast it'd be June. So you get June. July, August, and then the B disappears for these 3: September, October, November, December. So that's got Diz at the start rather than December, December. That's what it tends to get said. So you can class nouns into 2 classes. You've got countable nouns and you've got mass nouns. And countable nouns are things that will take numbers. So you can have 1 heed, 2 heed, 3 Egypts, 4 hooses, 1 house. Mass nouns will only take a number for it. You're talking about the full mass of things like soup. You talk about the soup. You would only say 1 soup, 2 soup, that kind of thing, if you were ordering bowls of soup, right? That kind of thing. But the soup is the full mass here. So the wood, the ale, the grass. So you wouldn't really say 1 grass. You'd need to say 1 blade of grass. Ale, you would need to say 1 gallon of ale, that kind of thing. The wood. So that's mass nouns and countable nouns. And then as we go into the numbers, we've got the first unit, this unit 1 is a wee bit footery. And then we'll go through these. So in Scots, we've got 2 systems for the word 1 going on. We've got the more traditional Scots system, which is ain and a. So if you're using it, if you're asking how many things there are, like how many sheep is there in the field, you would say there's ain sheep, there's yin sheep, there's een sheep. So yin and een are dialect variations of ain. So how many sheep is there? There's ain, right? But if you're talking about 1 sheep, you just use the a for them. Now this has disappeared for a lot of dialects, but you'll find it in like Burns's a phone kiss. Or I'll be there in a minute, right? You'll get that. So you would say a coo, a sheep, that kind of thing. So you'll get that, and then you've got one that behaves to say it doesn't have this way that it's split into A and A. And you'll get one, and that behaves the same as one in English. It's just used nicely. 1, 2, 3. Say in Glasgow, he's one of the ones. You would tend to say that. Now, my dialects get uses the Scots form indicatively if you're trying to indicate what you're wanting to talk about. So I would say he's one of the yins. He one of them to the big yin. He one of them to the wee yin. Right. So I use one, ein, occasionally a, and I also use one. So I've got 4 versions of this word in my dialect. In the northeast, you might say he's ina this yin, that kind of thing. So work out yourself how you actually use that word. Then you've got twa, twa, or twa. Look at that. I don't often say that, but it's a big part of a lot of dialects. Twa should have an E at the end there. My apologies. Then you've got 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you've got 7, 7, or 7. So there's 3 varieties of that going on. 7, 7, or 7. And for 8, you've got 8 or 8. That's not really in my dialect, but it's still there in a lot of spoke dialects. 9 and 10. Then you've got 11 or 11. There's a famous Burleson sketch about that. 12 for 12. 13. So we see that's not an I in there. It's 13. It's no 13, but a lot of folk will say 13 or 13, and that's that sound effect. But 13. Then for the kind of higher numbers, 20. That's in just about every dialect. 20. 30. Again, that's the E sound in there. 30. That tends to only be used in some dialects. That's not so universal. 60 would be another one like that. And then these things are pretty universal. 100, 1,000. And Persia, 100 becomes 100. 100. It's got that form in there. Persia tends to have the D's where most other Scots doesn't it? 1,000. And then that's the older form, 1,000,000. It's got that yoke in there, I know. And you hear that yes sound, 1,000,000 versus 1,000,000. So the standard English, 1,000,000 versus 1,000,000. It's got the yeah in there. And then you get squillions, billions, trillions, all that kind of variation there comes in. So that's the numbers. That these get applied to countable nouns. So you can say 13 Egypts went into that wood, and you wouldn't say 5 Isle, right? That's just mass nouns didn't take that. So that matters when we go into prepositions and things like that. That we make sure we understand the difference between countable and mass nouns. Yeah. So that's the last wee bit in nouns, and this is plurals. So this is for your countable nouns. So behaves a wee bit different for standard English, but like standard English, you get plurals that didn't change, that the word will only change, that the noun doesn't change. If you're talking about 1 sheep or 3 sheep, it's just sheep. That's what you say. Now in Scots, that can apply to a lot of animals. So 1 deer, 3 deer, whereas in English it'd be 1 deer and 3 deers, right? Cannon is the same. One cannon, 40 cannon, 40 cannons, and standard English. So you've got these words. Just keep an eye out for them. You just need to learn them because they're irregular. They don't. There's no a really strong rule that does that. Then you've got this class here that is still irregular, but there's a change between a singular and a plural form here. So you'd have 1 coup, and for me, So in some dialects, kai is a plural, so you could have 40 kai. The way I would say it is that kai becomes a mass noun for me, but I'm recognising that most folk that use this word, it would just be the simple plural. So that's a change in the vowel there. So I would say 1 ku, 3 kus, the kai, but other dialects would say 1 ku, 3 kai, right? Then you've got words that are maybe the vowel change is a bit different for English. So you've got your fit and your feet, whereas in English it's foot to feet. Woman, a woman, 1 woman, 30 women. I would tend to say women, but women does exist. It does persist in loads and loads of dialects. That's kind of Scots form. So you see that's 2 vowels that's changing there. The and the a becomes an e and an e. Yeah, so woman, women. And then you've got this n ending that it does exist in English. So you've got child and children for the plural form, taking an n at the end. E and een for the eyes. Stare and stern. Sometimes you'll hear stern used as a singular and then the plural being sterns. Older ones would be tree and treen. You'll see that in older. If you're ever reading older Scots text. Shoe or a shea and sheen or shoon. You'll hear that quite a lot. So a pair of sheen is a pair of shoes in a lot of dialects. So we've got that. Plurals, most words. So this is the regular form, and this is what you do for every noun. So nouns are open class. If you invent a new thing and you give it a name, then it follows these rules when it comes in. So just a simple S. So shanners. Your motors are shanner, your sannies are shanners, right? That kind of thing. So I'll take the S at the end. Coleyback, I'd call that a cootie carry. Anyway, so a coleyback, I got 1 coleyback, and then he wouldn't give me any more. Or he gave me 3 coleybacks a day, right? If you're saying that way away. Again, that's a cherry tree to me. It's also the fruit for a lot of folk. Again would be 1. Look at the flowers in that green. Oh, look at the greens, the flowers are falling off them today. So that's just a regular use of that. You just put an S in the end. If a word ends with an S, a Z, or a sh, it takes this ES form. So now we've got to Cockney here because the written form is the same as in Standard English. That's ES. But the spoken form is different. So a rose, 3 roses in Scots. It takes the E sound there. Whereas in English it would be a rose, 1 rose, 3 roses. So it becomes is the sound of the Standard English end. Rose, roses. Hoose, hoosies. And you see that doesn't become houses. That doesn't change to a Z sound when it becomes a plural in Scots. Course, so that's a Scots course. We're doing courses. A class, 1 class, classes, right? So it takes that glasses on my face. So it takes that E's sound rather than S, roses, that kind of form in English. So we see that doesn't become a Z. So that's, if we mind back to our consonant sounds, that's a S going to a Z. So it's just the voice turning on. And that applies for all plurals. And the most common unit in English is an F becomes a V when it's plural. That doesn't happen in Scots. So dwarf becomes dwarfs, leaf becomes leafs, wife becomes wifes, roof becomes roofs, knife becomes knives. So that's wolf becomes wolves, right? So it doesn't change to a V in Scots. And the TH is another one, that's a versus a th sound. So they're a wee bit rarer, but a path becomes the paths, right? So that doesn't take the the voiced form. So that's a sound effect that doesn't happen there. You'll find sometimes when folk have been corrected, maybe in school, if people are talking about the leaves, no, it's leaves, then as an application of that rule, the singular form will come that way, and people will talk about a leaf of the tree, L-E-A-V-E. So you'll find it, the rule's been over applied, and that's because it's not part of their language. So we've got that. Words of quantity will only go to plural in Scots. They tend to be singular. So you would say 3 mile, 10 foot high, geese 20 pound. That wain weighs 31 pun now, right? So pun and pun diverge in Scots. The weight's pun, the money's pun. And even words that kind of get introduced, like kilo, 47 kilo, you would say that. I tend to take that with an A ending. I should maybe have spelled it with an A ending in Scots, like Glasgow, Barra. I wonder if Keely is said in other dialects. So 47 kilo. So words of quantity will be singular. Then nouns take diminutive endings. The IE is the most common. So rather than saying "Gie's a sweet," you'll say "Gie's a sweetie." That kind of form. And that applies to loads and loads of things. It's also used for folk that work at a job. So like a janitor becomes a Janny, the postie, a workie, that kind of thing, a scaffy. That's halfway common. And some dialects it goes on to maced nouns. So what some person in the northeast, just about every noun tacks that wee IE at the end. And then there's the other form, oak, and that's "Gie's a bittock" at that. So that's less common. You'll see that "Gie's a bittock" at that. You'll hear it in names. Jamie or James becomes Jimmocks, Jimmock, that kind of thing. So you'll hear that awfully less common. Sometimes they're used in together. So you can say, if you want, if you're after a wee drap of cheese, a wee drap cheese, "Gie's a wee bittocky of cheese," bit-uck-a, and that's the order that goes in. Uck will go first and then a. So you'll hear that. So that's the diminutive endings there. That's went in to standard English, and you'll find that in words like selfie and things like that, where it gets "Gie's take a wee selfie," but it's less productive. And just to finish off, I'll talk about how nouns modify other nouns, right? So I said that it's there an adjective, you'd put big Ian, right? So you'd put the adjective in front of that. Now, in Scots, you can do that with nouns. You can put nouns together. Good examples of that are like the Lobby Press, or Bawheed, or Muttonheed. So we see that the first word here is a noun. It's no an adjective. So like Muttonheed would tend to be muttony head, and so you take the Y ending in English to make a noun into an adjective. So that would be muttony head or something like that. But in Scots, we just use the plain nouns. They don't get turned into adjectives. And this happens a wee drap and stone in English, but it's what we say is no productive. So you don't get any new words. But in Scots we do, and in particular when you're giving nicknames to somebody. So say somebody's ate all the cheese, you would say, "Where's all the cheese? Cheese gob," right? Something like that. Cheese gob. So that's cheese gob, cheese face, cheese pus. And often this, when you're coming up with nicknames for folk, it's kind of used that way. It's no way offensive, and these nicknames often don't persist as names for folk. What would be like something really simple? If somebody's doing their mascara and you're waiting to go out, you could say, "Right, mascara face, we're going," that kind of thing. So it's very productive in terms of making up new
names. So these constantly evolve, these new names. So that's us covered all the stuff today with nouns that we're going to look at. Hopefully that gives you an idea how they work. As we go through the different word classes, nouns are pretty straightforward, but the other ones take a wee bit more kind of understanding. All this is going to be, you'll be able to download all this and pour through it yourself and think about your own language and see what you do in your own language and use this to describe and understand what you're doing with your language. Right, so I'll see you for the next one, pals. Cheers and out. Bye-bye.